Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators football podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by your other host, Randy. Randy, we are 2.5 weeks away. How are we feeling?
Amped. Absolutely amped. You got fall camp going on. You got Sumrall on the mic dropping hot bikes here and there. It's man, it is so palpable. I know we did each other a favor. Well, made each other a promise. We would try not to see things with orange and blue goggles as much as possible. Call spades spades. And I'm telling you, man, it's just it is so, it feels so much different than the previous 4 years. It's not even funny.
It does. Having said that, though, I don't know. I've still got a couple things that I'm moderately worried about right now. We'll see. They're minor concerns, but in the vein of keeping it there, we'll talk more about that later. But you mentioned fall camp, so let's get into it and talk some fall camp updates and intel.
Yeah.
And that is the topic for this evening. So with that, we'll kick things off as always with our intro, our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda. Our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our accuracy disclaimer is that our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or stats.ncaa.org, and recruiting data comes from on3.com. Our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express the opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss our observation of player personnel decisions, as well as on-the-field execution. All right, so agenda for tonight, the topics we're going to get into. We're going to talk about some significant player body composition changes. Then we're going to look at the most recent IR update, because we don't say the I word, right? We're then going to talk about the QB battle and where the update on that stands currently. And we'll do some individual player call-outs from their performances so far in camp. Some of that may be back to the spring a little too, but we'll also include current camp updates with that. And then last but not least, other news and buzz from camp in general. And then we will close it out and wrap it up and go from there. So with that, let's get things started and talk about some of these player body comp changes. Start us off, if you would, please.
Well, we've had a lot of transformations this off season. It's been noticeable, especially when you look at Sumrall's comments in his opening presser. So there's that, and then a couple of other things that come down the pipeline from spring camp. But at the end of the day, I'm going to start us off with probably one of the bigger ones is going to be Hezzy Kent. And as far as what he came out at somewhere about 313, 315, 316 pounds, whatever you want to call it. But he went from that. Now he's somewhere sitting at about 285 to 288. Okay, so some significant losses there in a good way. Here's the thing. Even Coach Witt said it was a tough day, right? It was a tough daily grind, weekly grind for Hezzy. He had to do team run, team lift. They strapped him on with a 10-pound weight vest, now a 20-pound weight vest. He's walking around campus 20, 30, 45 minutes a day. And then July, he was doing that twice a day. Put in a lot of work. They were super proud of him. Here's the other interesting thing about him is the fact that, Coach Sumrall even told him is that, hey, we got a couple of goal weights in mind, right? Here's this, here's this, here's this. And if we can't do this, then, hey, guess what? I've got a new offensive lineman. And he said, right. Coach, respectfully, I'm a tight end. And the interesting thing about him, and I know we're talking about body comp, but did you hear Sumrall's quotes on his ball skills?
I did.
He said a word that you like using for the defense, but the E word, elite ball skills. It's amazing.
He said best on the team.
He said best
hands on the team, and that's
right?
Crazy when you look at the receivers. But exactly. I mean, I will say I believe John if he says it. Like not be somebody who's just going to say that. So
100%. And so really need to see where the kid's gone. Like literally kid, where he's gone from to where he is now. And guess what? He's got a little bit more work to do. They think the ideal weight for him should be somewhere around 275. 273, right there in that 270 range. If he can do that, combine that with elite ball skills, and then just be an absolute grown man pushing people off and doing whatever he's doing, he's going to be a very valuable piece for sure.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, really, really impressive one there for sure. And very interesting one too, because I think it does now put him in the serious conversation of, okay, we're to a point now where you can actually get somewhere with this. And, this is interesting too, right? So I didn't think about this until right now, but I know it's just one guy. But, Big Dez could never really drop the weight. Was that him? Or was that maybe some of the strength and conditioning stuff that was going on as well? I'm sure to a degree it was him. I'm sure to a degree it was him because he couldn't do it at Tampa either, right? So, I'm sure that part of that was Dez himself. But it's just an example when we see all of these guys and some of these significant weight changes. And don't get me wrong, I know we talked about some of this stuff in previous years, right? But some of these numbers really stood out to me, and maybe more so the positions at which they were, right? So you're talking Hezzy. I'm going to talk Caden Jones here. We got Fletcher Westfall later. We got LJ McCray. We got big guys here, right? We're not talking about, muscle gained by Cormani. Don't get me wrong. That was impressive. Boulders for shoulders, right? Thing we talked about last year. That's a good thing. But those guys are already lean and fit and, just adding muscle. It's different to do that versus drop weight and add muscle, right? Like we're going to talk about here with a couple of these guys, especially. So just an interesting maybe difference in who we're talking about and how we're talking about them, right? So with that, I'll move on to Caden Jones here. 348 was his I don't know if this is spring. I don't remember if these were, I apologize. I don't remember if these were like winter weights before spring camp or if they were post spring weights. I think they were winter, but regardless, 348 down to 319, just shy of 30 pounds. And with Rusty doing the workout stuff, and then you'll talk to some of that weight, later. I know there's no way he got weaker doing that, right? This is fat loss, and I'm sure probably also some muscle gain. So really more than that in fat loss, right? So significant weight loss here for a guy who probably needed to get a little more fit. 350 was pretty big, even at 6'8", right? For Caden. I mean, that's big. So now that we're down to the 320 range, that's a lot more in line probably with where he needed to be. And that's great to see. Should hopefully help him. I think the quote from John was, you can't move others well if you can't, or it's hard to move others well if you can't move yourself. Right. I believe that was the quote. So, but yeah, so that's the story on Caden. You want to go next to LJ?
Yeah, I do. And that's what's going to be important here. If Caden's really going to be, I know we talked about this before, but splitting between right and left tackle is a tackle spot, what that does. And then once you drop that weight, and I like the point you made, it's not just about dropping weight, right? Because muscle weighs more than fat. So that muscle adds on. And so we're reducing enough amount of fat. But look at how much is being replenished with actual muscle and strength to be able to move other 300-pound humans and get them to do what you want them to do as part of your job on that line. Extremely important. Right. Extremely important. LJ McCray. Let's talk about this. Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Talk about adding muscle, right? Added 21 pounds of lean muscle mass, entered camp, right? Still 6'6", 6'5", 3/4, whatever. 270 now to 277, 78 pounds. So a total of 14 pounds of actual fat loss, right?
Yep.
The kid looked big before, but now he's a little bit more chiseled, toned, defined, speedier. They've actually described LJ as being twitchy or jittery-like. So he's got a good step. This is also intriguing. Before, he ran 18.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Now he's clocked at 20.31 miles an hour.
Dude, that size, that is flying. That is flying for a dude his size.
So that's called, I'm going to get off the line and create some havoc as soon as possible.
Yep, for sure. No, those numbers are, well, again, something we'll speak to a little more later in talking about some of our player stuff for sure. I've got some notes on his performance and what he's been showing. So, but I'll move on for now to the last guy on the list, which is Fletcher Westfall. Again, another huge weight drop here, 331 now. In fairness, Fletcher's had a tough time. He's had some injuries, right? It's been harder for him to work, but still did a really good job here. 331 dropped down to 309, so a 22-pound reduction. Again, I don't have the exact breakdown. It wasn't given on, how much is fat loss, muscle gain, but we know he had some muscle gain in there. There's no way, especially with him, because he hasn't been able to lift as much as he probably needed to because of that wrist injury that he's been dealing with, right, prior to this year. So I feel certain that you've got some significant muscle gain there, and yet you still lost 22 pounds. So definitely a good amount of fat loss there that probably needed to go. So really encouraged to see that too. A lot of people are, wanting to see Fletcher get some more run, right, because of his recruiting profile and stuff like that, to kind of see what he's capable of. I will put my confidence in the coaching staff on that if he's ready, he's ready, and if he's not, he's not, and that's fine, right? We'll make the right calls there. But to that end, again, just another solid drop here. Everybody on here lost at least, right, 20 pounds with the exception of McCray, but he gained 21 pounds of muscle, right? So that was really important to call out at his position, we felt. So really, really good stuff here, and excited to see what the effects, that it could have, right? Especially when we combine it in with the potential strength gains, which I know you want to talk about.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that's really interesting is I'm going to go back. I'm going to take a step back before we get to the gains.
Sure.
One of the most important things, crucial things, indictment, whatever you want to call it, that Sumrall said months ago at a conference was the strength of the offensive lines, but particularly the offensive line, very underwhelming, right? Yep. In other words, that's just coach speak for disappointing. And so I think I want to talk to this a little bit in the sense of go back to Tyler Miles. Tyler Miles is not a bad strength and conditioning guy. Tyler Miles is very skilled at what he does. Now, remember, folks, he ran a program up there in Tennessee that got players ready for the combine, got players ready for the draft. So he took what you had and he kind of topped you off, right? Topped off the tank. That's what Tyler did. What you see Rusty Witt coming in here and do, this is reminiscent of what Urban did as far as coming in here, military style, breaking you down, breaking your body down and almost quasi rebuilding it. This is what's happening. And this is why you're seeing some of these massive gains and losses. And especially when you look at in the trenches where SEC football is, where the tone is set and where a lot of games are won and lost, we need to have these guys up front, not just agile and quick. And if they're 4-star, 5-star because of they used to throw on kids in high school, that's fine. But at the end of the day, they're up against other 300-pound men, and they need to be stronger. They need to be faster, and they just need to be playing out better. And part of that starts with that conditioning. And so that speaks probably to the biggest thing that we could do to this line, besides have them be competent and obviously a very cohesive unit. To that end, there was a number that Sumrall said somewhere in the vicinity of 14,000 pounds. The number that I saw quoted a few different places, about 13,850. This is the number. This is the amount of pounds that this team has lifted, has gained in the 4
not just lifted, gained. Yeah.
Gained. Bingo. Right? We're talking about bench, squat, power clean, and deadlift. So when Witt came, Sumrall came, and they're in there lifting weights together, and they go, wait a minute, this is not too comfortable. This is not too feasible to really, this is not a weight room. And then the weight room went through a makeover, right? Almost $1 million makeover, whatever the number was. And so that happened. And all of a sudden, from then to now, this team magically can lift almost 14,000 pounds more than they could have back in February. Wow. Yeah. If that's not the definition of strength training and discipline, I don't know what is, B.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's pretty impressive for sure. And I liked, somebody asked Rusty at his presser about this. He said, okay, what does that mean? Like, quantify that. Like, is that a lot? Like, and, like, compare it to past squads. And he basically said, yeah, it's one of the bigger numbers, right, that we've seen. If not, he's like, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's one of the bigger numbers that we've had and that we've been able to achieve or accomplish in any of the past like units that I've worked with. That was essentially effectively the quote, right? So, and how it translates and things of that nature, difficult to tell. But I will say one of the things that I like that he said about the different lifts that they do and how they complement one another and things that they work on and build is one of the words that he used in particular was he really liked where it put them in terms of durability. In terms of not just the strength gains, but also the durability that it would have. So, to that end, let's take a look and move on at our most recent IR update for the word we're not using. So let's see how that factors in. And I would say so far, so good. Your only IR updates in camp so far of significance. Now, we have had a couple that were bigger than this, but they're not players that are really going to see the field, so we're just not getting into it. Cam James and Duke Clark were the only ones who have been dinged up. They are no longer dinged up, really, kind of, maybe. As of yesterday, they both returned to practice in some capacity. They were, I believe Cam was somewhat limited, but he was supposed to maybe get full run today. And I think Duke was back close to full go today or yesterday. And the only other report is that on Saturday from the scrimmage, Jordy Lowry caught a soft tissue concern in the scrimmage, but it doesn't, like I always said, concern. But it doesn't seem to be long term. Trying to do whatever I can not to use the I word.
Good job.
Well, again, other players are out here, but almost certainly not going to even project to hit the 2 deep. So we're just not going to update. I mean, Evan Chica and I think there's just like a fourth string walk on running back that got really hurt. He got badly hurt, unfortunately. But I don't remember his name. I apologize. But they're just not going to impact who would have been seeing on the field. So we're just not going to get into detail about all of that. So yeah, overall, really positive news on that front so far. Knock on all the wood. I do have one other update, but any thoughts on that before I give it?
I like the fact that Double D, Dijon Johnson, working his way back. They're going to use an abundance of caution with him, obviously, and that's from off-season knee surgery, so that is what it is. VB3's got a bone bruise, foot bruise, whatever the case might be, right? But
yeah, but he was full go as of yesterday. They just pulled him out for precautionary from the scrimmage.
Dallas on a pitch count, Jaden's on a pitch count. That is what it is.
Yep.
I think you mentioned Cam got some team reps, so that's good. Duke Clark, an abundance of caution, whatever you said, right? In teamwork, so that's fine. Javion Toombs, no teamwork. CJ Brauna coming back. Talk about boulders for shoulders with Cormani. Look at Brauna. Brauna went from 160 to 184, 85. Yeah. Gurville's got a shot to return earlier than anticipated, but an abundance of caution with him. Jordy Lowry, I like what he said about Jordy, soft tissue. Yeah, but he hates it for him because his upside, his arrow was up. He's been a very pleasant surprise here at fall camp. So glad to hear that. And then Durkin was sidelined. But Liam Padron backup came in and just went 9 for 10 and was money. So Durkin's going to be back. He'll kick. That's fine. But Sumrall feels confident to know that, hey, we actually have another leg in that room. That's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, it's great. It's huge, honestly, to be able to have that as a backup. I mean, a lot of colleges don't have one kicker, much less two. So no, the only other thing I was going to mention was Dallas's workload being on a pitch count, like you mentioned, continues to be managed, right? So if you've seen some highlights and you've seen him on the jugs machine instead of, running routes or being out there with the team, it's not a problem. It's not a concern. They're just monitoring his reps and continue to do so. And you may even see some of that as the season starts, right? He may not get full run in the first couple of games before they really, basically until they got to have it, they may not, use him fully. I'm sure he's going to play, but I don't know if he'll be getting the run he would get in some of those other games. So again, knock wood, still good to go on Dallas. So hopefully it stays that way. And we'll leave it at that. All right. Anything else there before we move on?
I think that's good. Pretty good wrap.
Cool.
I like the way things are at. I like the way things are shaping up. I like the people who've come back for guys coming back from injury and like you said, knock on a lot of wood. So far, so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, some notes from the QB battle. So, I know this is a hot topic for everybody.
You
If
don't
you
say.
listen to anybody talk about anything or read anything about it, yeah, no kidding, right? It's been just all the talk, all the stories. So, um, my thoughts here are first scrimmage, update is probably your biggest indicator we have so far. I think, and currently, I still don't have a guess because Philo took more first team reps with the scrimmage. I say I don't have a guess. That's not true. I do. That's untrue. But in terms of like one delineating themselves from another, I don't think we have that. Philo took more reps with the first team, but didn't maybe play as well as Trammell did with the second team. Well, what does that say? I don't know. As has been discussed and as was very well asked by somebody at the press conference.
Oh,
Okay,
Zach,
yeah, you didn't. Yeah, it was Zach, I think. You don't.
the question from ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. He said, "Did you get the question from Chat GPT?"
That was
Sumrall.
pretty good.
That was funny.
Pretty quick.
But I mean, what's funny is that I had the same question and I didn't get it from Chat GPT. So just saying. But because it's not the same question, but it's the same thought, right? Is that if you're up against the first team, that's harder competition.
Yep.
So you have to grade it differently, which is exactly what John said he does. To me, it was a perfect answer that he gave, is that he's going to evaluate the guy that's thrown against the first team or when a guy is thrown against the first team, not just the guy, differently than when they're thrown against the second team. And that is a perfect answer for two different reasons that he mentioned. One, second team defense, but two, a point that he made was also good, is second team receivers, which is not the same talent pool that he's throwing to, right? So really well said and evaluated there. And I think it's a super strong point. So Philo having one pick should have been at least one more based on the notes from the scrimmage, but
Right.
he only had one and one TD versus Trammell having two TDs and no picks, though should have had at least one or maybe two himself from the pick department. But then also Philo should have had another touchdown that got dropped. So, I don't know. We're that's just stats. We weren't there to see it. We couldn't get a feel for it, right? That's hard. Um, I think it's very difficult to evaluate just based off that, right? And it's only one practice, but it again, we were looking at it as more of an indicator of, okay, Philo's getting more first team run. That probably means he's leading. But
Right.
then because he didn't do as well, does that pull them back, to more even? Perhaps, but I think it is an indicator, and I'll talk to this a little more later. I think it is an indicator that Philo is probably going to be your guy, especially with some of the stuff Summerall continues to say about Trammell in terms of things like, we can't signal for motion and then not have a guy motion, right? Like stuff like that, missing cues, missing stuff at the line. That stuff is significant and it does matter. And I don't think he's doing it all the time, but because it's still happening, I do think there's valid and real concern there for Trammell not necessarily having it day one. Doesn't mean we can't get there, as John said in the SEC media days, right? Just because you start game one doesn't mean you start game 12. And I think that's a very fair point. So um, those would be my thoughts right now. I do think, even though they haven't differentiated themselves, maybe, I think Philo is probably still your leader right now based on everything that we're hearing and seeing. I don't know. Where are you at with it?
Yeah. So a couple of great points you make there. I look at it in the sense of I got to, pull out the old legal pad and put pros and cons and put the line down the middle and go from there, and kind of
Yeah.
like I would sum it up as the beginning of spring, we had this massive gap because Philo came with Buster and Philo was with Buster for 2+ years and Philo knew the deal. And that's what it was. And then the
Yep.
spring happens, and then you're like, "Hey, Trammell's got some zip. He can really spin the ball. Okay, this is interesting." And we were told, not in coach speak, we were told Trammell, I'm gonna call him TJ, got TJ and AP. TJ shortened the gap at the end of spring, so it's really interesting to see what Trammell did to shorten that gap. How he did it. He stayed later. He stayed longer. He asked Buster a ton of questions. And he just became a student. The football IQ, you can tell, was there. For TJ, the main area of opportunity that we've heard is You said it perfect. Operating at the line of scrimmage, pre-snap reads, motions, shifts. Can't call a motion and not send the receiver in motion, whoever it is. However, what's very interesting is Sumrall juxtaposed that with, oh, he's super comfortable in the pocket. He's got a really good touch and he's got good energy. This kid has a bright future. The only thing we've heard that Philo does bad is protecting the football. So, but the thing that I glean from that is,
I'll argue that, but okay, keep going.
Sorry, the main thing is Philo protecting the football outside of arm strength, maybe as far as
Bingo.
the deeper ball. Fair.
Yep, bingo.
But the thing is, does Philo create more turnovers or fit the ball in certain windows because he was accustomed to ACC windows versus SEC window, the speed? Mm-hmm. Second thing I would say is, because he has such an innate knowledge of the offense, does he feel like he can push the envelope? Can he take more risks? Right? Yeah. And so that's what I'm looking at, because look at what Buster said months ago. This is not an easy offense for a QB. There's a lot going on. There's a lot on the QB shoulders to get the ball efficiently to those weapons, right? When it comes to the pre-motion shifts and everything else going on. It's not easy. It's very difficult. So kudos to Sumrall for being able to take that gap and go foomp. But to your point, I would agree, from all the other things that we've heard, Philo is still the quote unquote the leader in the clubhouse per se, right?
Yeah, it seems that way. Again, time will tell and we'll see. I mean, I feel pretty confident that he's getting to start game 1. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What matters is who gets to start game 3, right? On the road at Auburn. That's what's going to matter. So who gets to start game 1 or game 2, FAU and Campbell, it doesn't really matter. They're both going to play. We're both going to see them operate. We'll see how it goes. And then I think you and I both will have thoughts on who should get to start in game 3 based on what we see there.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember too, it's not just going to be about stats with that, right? We're going to evaluate, how are they running the offense? What decisions are they making? Are they making the right reads at the right times? That's where that film study is really going to be important in terms of that. Not that we get a say, obviously, we'll just have our opinion. It won't mean anything, but that's why we do this. It's just for fun, right? So there you go. All right. So moving on. Let's just hope that they agree, because I think that'll be important if there really is a clear leader. And yeah. I think important note, after the spring, you and I kind of felt the same way they did, right? We were kind of like, well, I see pluses and minuses for both right now, right? So like I saw clearly where there was a true dilemma. Despite the stats show out for Trammell, there were things that he did, especially early on in the scrimmage, that were not great. He clearly looked like he didn't have the play right on a couple of times. Definitely made a couple throws where they weren't bad throws, but they maybe weren't the right decision, right? They didn't put the ball at risk, which is good, but there were better options that he should have thrown to, should have read, things like that, which can also hurt you, right? They can also hurt you. So maybe not as much as a pick, in fairness, but we'll see. So, okay, moving on. Let's do some individual player call outs. I'm going to get this started. Already mentioned LJ McCray. Yeah. Big news here. If you're not aware, he's potentially come through now as a starter at defensive end over Cam James. Now, Cam James helped him out by not being available for most of fall camp so far until now. But in all likelihood, from everything we've seen, heard, talked about, the whole 9, it looks like Cam James is probably going to be the starter. Or I'm sorry, excuse me, LJ McCray is probably going to be the starter over Cam James at defensive end. That's what all the intel's saying. That's what's going on. We talked about the body transformation that we've been hearing about since spring, right? We've been hearing about that the entire offseason. But aside from that, he's had an outstanding camp. So whether he's a starter or not, the point is he's played well enough to be, and our depth at D-line and the ability to rush the passer is helped tremendously if LJ can start reaching some of the potential we know he has, right? So whether it's because he's stronger, faster, twitchier, as you mentioned, or just more able to be more aggressive and really have that chip on his shoulder from not being able to play last year, first time he was ever really significantly injured in his whole football career. I mean, big deal for him. It really, really hurt him. He talked about it, how much it stung him. And also another kid who's sitting here talking about Florida being his dream school. Like, love all the guys on the team saying that, by the way. It's awesome to hear, especially in this day and age. You just don't hear it that often, and I'm hearing a lot of our big players saying that. It's pretty neat thing, man. You want to talk about culture stuff? We'll get to that, I'm sure, at some point this year. But anyway, I digress. Having that weapon, if he can play even close to the level that he theoretically is capable of at his size and strength and speed, man, that adds a whole different dynamic, because when you put him across from Jaden Woods, now you get that effect we thought we were going to have last year and didn't, of having those two weapons on the edge. And I think you'll get it. I really do. I don't think we're going to miss. I don't think we're going to miss on that one. I think it's going to happen. And that's exciting. That's exciting for sure.
You don't think Chapman and White are over there just scheming up like, oh, baby?
By the way, quick aside, couple of little comments from John in the presser about some stuff Brad White might be scheming up. Ooh, got me a little excited on the defense, man. Oh, it gave me some chills talking about some of the stuff they're messing with. He didn't give anything away, mind you, but just talking about some play calls that, especially on 4th and 3rd and short, that are basically never don't work effectively. I was like, what? Like, okay, yes, let's run that, So just pretty interesting stuff there. But I digress. Let's move on.
I was going to say, apparently Brad White and Buster Faulkner have a call sheet that's over a mile long. Goodness.
Yeah, apparently, yes. Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, B, I'm going to join you. I'll take another guy on the line. I'm going to go on the interior side here. People have said this for a while. And again, we saw flashes of it, right? He started 11 games last year as a true freshman.
Played in. Didn't start, played in.
Sorry, appeared in.
Yes.
Thank you for the correction. Appeared in 11 games. He was ranked as number 143 overall in the class, right? So top 150 guy.
Yeah.
Okay, number 9 defensive tackle, number 19 recruit in the state of Georgia. No speeding tickets, don't worry. He only recorded 13 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, and a QB hurry. But I tell you what, Jeremiah McLeod has set this camp on fire. Okay.
Yep.
In the words of Sumrall, keep an eye on Jeremiah McLeod there in the interior, right? That's what's going to round out.
Didn't he say he's got a screw loose or something? Wasn't that Sumrall that said that?
He might have. But here's the thing. He's quietly made noise. He hasn't gone through the big body transformation some of the other guys have. 6'3", 6'3.5", 295 pounds. But I tell you what, he shows the strength, the quickness, and the motor needed to dominate in the trenches. Not to mention, he stood out, and Brad White has said this, and he's either White or Chapman, as a 3-technique defender. He's got tools, right? He's got tools, He's got ability, he's got a high football IQ, and not to mention, when you couple those things together and you use him effectively in the right scheme, boy, he could wreck a backfield quick.
Yeah.
And not to mention, free up the ends to do some other unique things. Gee, gosh, if only we had some talented ends that we can just cut loose. Anyways, so for me, as far as keep an eye on, Jeremiah McLeod is definitely what's going to finalize the interior of that defensive line and create opportunities to allow some others to create and wreak havoc.
Yes, and while he did not start last year, I think all projections are looking like he will this year be the starter up next to Bet on the interior of the line, which to me is huge news, right? You got Mbachu in there, you got Jamari Lyons, who's like a 5th-year senior in there. You got some significant size and talent in the interior of that defensive line. And it looks like Jeremiah McLeod, who would not have been, I don't think, on the radar at the end of last year to be your starter next to Brennan Bett, which certainly would have been to replace Banks. But you did not have Jeremiah McLeod on the bingo card. I don't think anybody did, to be the replacement for. I don't even really know who he's technically replacing. It would have been Cam Jackson 2 years ago, but I think Banks technically filled that role. So I don't know if that's sliding over. But regardless, I don't think we had him coming in as a starter. I didn't, for sure. And now it looks like he's going to be. So pretty impressive stuff. But as I just mentioned, you've got depth behind him too, right? So you've got Jamari probably backing up Bet, and then you've got Mbachu backing up McLeod, which is not a bad place to be based on everything we've heard about these guys and their camps and everything else. We talked about him before, but McLeod kind of surprised us here, and that's good news, right? That's good news.
Very
So
good on an otherwise
yeah,
already solidified D line, but the
yeah,
depth piece does not hurt at one bit.
no, not at all. And again, some of this D line stuff, I got a note about it later, but some of this D line stuff is very, very encouraging. All right, next up. This one's kind of surprising too. Now, I had him called out as being in my top 11 for talent
You
on
did?
defense. We had him as an under the radar spotlight player. He ain't going to be under the radar anymore, apparently, because Ben Hanks is looking like he's almost certainly going to start at corner, and he might even be CB1 from the talk. Standout in both spring and now fall as well. He has been the best cover corner out there. And again, as I mentioned, almost certainly earned a starting role and possibly even undisputed number one cornerback, which is wild for a true sophomore. The thing I love most about the notes that I have heard from fall is he and Dallas are going head to head. They actually have a bet on
Yes.
who will get the better of each other in their matchups. Last I heard, it's currently tied up 3-3, which is also awesome. Totally going after the whole iron sharpens iron concept. They're talking about it openly. They're saying they even, got into it a little at one of the scrimmages, because they
Yes.
were getting after each other so much. I mean, this is the competitive fire that you want on your team between two of your most talented guys. I love it. I cannot tell you how much I love it. This is the kind of stuff you want to be hearing. This is what we need to be hearing out of camp, is stuff like this between those two. But yeah, Ben Hanks absolutely been locking it down, and we have seen some film to back that up, quite frankly. Not a ton, but enough that I'm like, okay, yep, he's getting that done. So looking very, very good so far. Old number 12 out there on the D. So gives you a little more faith in that quarterback room potentially.
Yes, it
So,
does.
yep. All right, who's up next?
By the way, did you happen to catch Ben Hanks the third's nickname?
Mm-mm.
Glitch.
Mm,
Thank
I
you,
like
Zach,
that.
for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we can go with that.
Uh-huh. So, all right. So last player, I felt kind of lopsided because all these were on the defense, and I had a defensive guy picked again. I'm like, you know what? I got to show the offensive stuff. So who has been a true standout? So you're looking at all these guys. We've heard a little bit about London Montgomery. We've heard a little bit about, with Duke Clark being banged up, right? We've heard a couple of things on the offensive side of the football with Boyer stepping up and all that. But I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
big buzz out of, and again, you wouldn't expect it because given the room, okay, the
Even the
room is
room.
stacked. Wide receiver Bailey Stockton
Yep.
has been the definitive sleeper of camp. Okay, his chemistry with Aaron Philo is there. His knowledge of the offense is there. Now he actively participated in the weight room, in drills, and not to mention he took a leadership role in a lot of those weight days. And so couple that, getting stronger and getting faster. Here's another one whose speed increased by almost a full mile an hour, right? That flashed with great hands, better route running, allowing him to push for some playing time in an already crowded receiver room, especially on the leadership side, the vocal side. He's definitely stepped up in a lot of different ways. So for me, I got to give a nod to Bailey Stockton. A
I
lot of
like it.
great work around him, and overall good kid. And he's done a great. He knew exactly what he was running into. No pun intended there. Coming into this wide receiver room, but to see the talent we have there between Singleton, VB3, Wilson, even Mays, and Bailey just comes in and says, "Okay, cool. I'll try and pick up next where I can," and just put his head down and do the work. Been phenomenal.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because I think he will get some run, even though obviously VB3, going to be the starter there unquestionably. It's wearing number one. There's no doubt. But and Bailey's going to play the slot, which is where VB3 plays. But I think you could see some formations. Certainly, we could see some four wide stuff where we could come in with two slots, right? That's certainly an opportunity for him to get on the field. But even beyond that, I think you're just going to see him get some run, and I think you'll certainly see him find his way to getting open and finding some passes throughout the season. I don't know exactly how much production it's going to turn into. Read a really interesting article the other day. I can't remember who wrote it. I apologize right now. On just like best all time production for number one, number two, number three, and number four, and I think maybe even number five wide receivers in a Buster Faulkner offense, like all time.
Oh,
Really interesting stuff there, and kind of projecting where our different receivers might finish. I didn't necessarily agree with all the projections, but loved all the historical data from it.
yeah.
Really neat stuff there. Whoever put that together, nice work on that. I apologize, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but really neat stuff in projecting that and seeing that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Bailey fits in. So, all right. Moving on, other news and buzz out of camp. So first piece is more news than buzz. O-line is still being shuffled around to find your best combinations. And I'm still concerned about what that means, as we mentioned in apprehensions and anticipations, right? An apprehension was that we're not going to get this thing settled fast enough to really have guys have continuity, right? Obviously, the O-line is an apprehension in and of itself, but I did hear a rumor that the plan is, and it's more than a rumor because John more or less said it, that the plan is to try and solidify the positions this week as far as your, he said, he called it basically your starting eight, right? Your eight guys rotation, as well as hopefully a starting group in and of itself to try to build some continuity, right? And did hear some positive comments about the potential of this group and what they can do at times. Just got to find more consistency doing it. I'll also say John's comments went on to talk about the interior of the line, right guard, center, and left guard, being Najee, Harrison, and TJ.
Yes.
I think we're pretty fixed there, and I think he's pretty happy with that based on the comments that he talked about. I think we're starting to see that piece come together. We just got to figure out the tackles, and they're not there yet. And that is a concern because 3 isn't enough. As we talked about last week, it's got to be all 5, and you got to have some rotational guys that can come in too, but like the starting 5 has got to have it together. They've got to play as one, the whole thing we've been through. I'm not going to go through it again. But I'm very hopeful that they accomplish their mission this week, figure out who their rotational 8 are, their main 8 that they're going to use, not that they can't ever use anybody else, but that their main 8, and that they can solidify who these tackles are and get them playing as we go into the last week of camp and then game week for FAU. So any thoughts on that before we move on to other news?
No, I like what you said. Yeah, Moore, Harris, Shanahan. There's your middle, left, and right. And then after that,
Yep.
tackle spots wide open. However, the last thing that I read was it was narrowed down to Ugorji at right tackle, Boyer at left tackle, because Boyer's taken some leaps over the past few weeks. Oh, I didn't mean to make that rhyme. But either way, Ugorji and Boyer looks like the front runners right now. Sumrall says, and I quote, Lovett is unbelievably talented. Unbelievably talented. He's got giftedness. We just need him to do it more consistently. He's currently getting time at both sides of tackle. He can be as good as he wants to be. Very interesting there. So
and there's another body transformation there. Like he didn't have a lot of like weight movement, but he lost a ton of fat and gained a ton of muscle.
Okay,
he looks like a different dude. He looks like a different dude from all reports. So that's an interesting one too, and love it. But you mentioned who is currently being projected. Yes, that's true. But 2 weeks ago, Ugorji was the left tackle, not the right tackle, and Caden Jones was projected at the right tackle.
Sure.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think they figured it out yet. We'll see. Maybe that ends up being what it is. I'm fine with it if it is, but like,
yeah, sure.
We'll see. TBD on that big time. So, all right. Next piece of news. This one I picked out from somewhere. I think I might have got it from Gators Online. Actually, VB3 has been the hardest cover at receiver in camp consistently. Basically, he's unguardable. Is what we're hearing.
That's why they had to step on his foot.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they had to step on his foot because they couldn't cover him. They got pissed off. That's exactly right. However, I will throw this out there. He is playing in the slot, as I mentioned, and it should be noted that he's not going up against Ben Hanks all the time or even Cormani all the time, right? I'm sure those guys are on him from time to time, depending on where he's running and, if they're playing zone or man or whatever. But he's probably playing against Kanye Clark most of the time. In the slot as the nickel corner across from and everything else. Now, I don't I'm not taking anything away from Kanye saying that, but he maybe doesn't have quite the coverage skills of those other two I just mentioned, right? When we talk about this. I think that is a point worth noting in this. However, I also don't want to take anything away from VB3 either, right? Like he's clearly worked his butt off this offseason. He's really primed to go out there and have a year. And I'll be interested to see, just evaluating, Buster's offense, what receiver position we think after a couple weeks is going to have the opportunity to shine the most, just from like a formational standpoint, right? Will it be the slot? Will it be the X? Will it be, will it be the Y? Will it be the Z? Right? I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see on that, because Buster has said this is not going to look like Georgia Tech's offense. It's going to be different, which I liked hearing, for the record. Not that I think there's anything wrong with Georgia Tech's offense, but it just doesn't fit who we have personnel-wise right now. And shocker, he's going to adapt it for the personnel. Who knew? So really good stuff there. But yeah, we're going to have to kind of wait and see. Again, another thing where we're just going to have to evaluate the film and see what it shows us and who we think looks like they have the best opportunities to look at some stuff. So we'll see. Last thing I have is, get down in my notes here. Apologies. Just the confidence in the production of the D-line, right? And this has been steadily growing, right? They had huge questions about it coming in as a staff in winter. Went through spring. By the end of spring, I think they were feeling pretty good about it. Went through off-season conditioning. You get to SEC media days. John's talking about they could take over games, right? And now we get into fall, and they're getting even better, right? We're seeing even more depth and dominance. This D-line might end up being pretty good. I'm holding my breath a little bit, but it might end up being pretty
good. E word. Okay.
No, I'm not going there yet. Okay. You got to prove that one to me. I'm not going to project that, but it might end up being like really good. We'll see. I'm trying not to get over my skis on it, but it all signs are pointing. You want to talk about the arrow pointing up, like you mentioned with Jordy earlier? The arrow is pointing way up on the defensive line as a whole, as a unit. So that's the last piece of buzz that I've got from camp. That's definitely a buzzworthy right there for sure. Any other points or notes or comments you want to make in terms of that stuff, and then we'll get on to these questions I got for you?
Oh, that's right. You got questions for him. Put me on the spot.
You got questions for you.
I love hearing Sumrall. I love him saying, "This pissed me off." I loved the transparency of what that looked like and the raw emotion that came from that. I love the fact that he said it was steamy in the stadium, and actually I wish it was a little bit hotter. Not from a torture standpoint, but from a discipline, from a focus aspect to the team, knowing what that means if you can play in those types of conditions where it starts to mess with you. I love the fact that he showed, as far as, I know you're very high on the linebackers. He talked about the linebacker room, right? He talked about specifically Ty Jackson being physically gifted. Gave him
think about it. He talked about the linebacker room, and all he talked about was the backups. Like, how good is that linebacker room going to be when all your coach is talking about is the backups?
Exactly. But to know that he threw out Jamin Davis, a comp on him to Ty, right?
Yeah.
But he said Ty's a quiet guy. He's got to get louder. We both had a yelling contest, whatever, right? And see, he still can yell louder than me. But again, John played linebacker, so he knows as linebacker, you've seen all this stuff come across. You've got to have a voice. You've got to call that stuff out. And it's interesting to see how he talked about Ty's football IQ growing, getting better. So that's good. Miles Johnson, if I'd give Miles Johnson an award right now, it would be Hustle Award, because John says he's got more effort plays than coming out of camp than anybody else. And effort and hustle gets you a lot as a linebacker, puts you in a good situation. So that's good. I like the fact that, out of nowhere, London Montgomery, the forgotten name in the running back room, physical, plays bigger than he is. So obviously we don't want Duke being down, but that was kind of a blessing in disguise because he's more sturdy than they thought. He's more physical. He's bigger. He's a hard tackle. And now he's projected kick returner as well. So You've got
Yeah,
that.
I don't know how I feel about. I don't know how I feel about that one, but we'll
I
see.
know you don't. I know you don't. But listen, if regardless of how they evaluate it, right? Because clearly he wants hidden yard. He wants hidden yardage to be a big part of the team, right? Special teams to be a big part of that. So if he's saying he's throwing that out there, I know he doesn't throw it out lightly. So
No,
just
he
very
doesn't.
see some of those things that have come about, right?
Yep.
Um, and then TJ Dice. Here's the last thing I'll call out for you that went to that. We played right and left tackle in the left tackle spot, back from ACL injury, emerging, getting stronger, getting better. So there's a lot of storylines, man. A lot more
Yeah.
than I anticipated.
Yeah, there really are. There really are, and it's going to be interesting to see how all of it plays out, or maybe how some of it fizzles out, right? Because we see that, right? Well, I remember years ago we talked about certain things in camp. We thought Tank Hawkins was going to have some kind of breakout season, and he didn't see the field. Now in fairness, that probably had a lot to do with the offense we were running, but or not running, but but the
What offense?
like we sometimes stuff in camp, we think about guys' names or talk about guys' names that they are potentially going to have an impact, and then nothing comes of it. So some of this may not amount to anything, but I think a lot of it, based on what we're hearing and seeing, I guess what I'd say is it feels right now like more of it is going to have some kind of impact. And that's what's interesting right now, but we'll obviously have to wait and see,
Yeah,
right? Like everything else, but not wait too much longer, which is nice. All right. Okay, let's get to these questions. So, little note about these questions. Randy has no idea what I'm about to ask him. I have given him no prep at all, except I gave him a little background on one of them in terms of the subject matter of it, but I did not ask him the question just because I wanted to make sure that he'd seen the topic so I didn't blindside him.
I know
Uh,
that.
yeah, so I'm going to put Randy on the hot seat here. We're gonna give him some questions, and I'll give you my responses as well. But mine are obviously not as impromptu because I wrote these. So there you go. So you ready? You ready to get on the hot seat, buddy?
Let's do it. Now I know how Billy Napier feels. Okay, go.
Yes, yes. Just hopefully you'll
Or
get better
felt.
answers than he did. So
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay. Number one. We mentioned it already. We think Philo is likely your game one starter, whether that stays or not, whatever. Let's assume that he is the game three starter for this question because that's a game that would matter more, right? Give me your confidence level right now. Obviously, we'll know more by game three, but right now, with what you know today, give me your confidence level 1 to 10 of Philo as the starter and why.
Well, truth be told, I've got to go look at the film and okay, no, that'd be a typical Napier response. Wow,
Yeah.
what a question, B. All right, so where's my confidence level if Aaron Philo is starting against Auburn right
Yes,
now?
but today, obviously, again, once we get there, and if he is, we'll know more. But let's assume that he is with the knowledge we have today. What is your confidence level 1 to 10, and why?
He's got a bit of swag about him. He's got the pencil thin mustache coupled with a little bit of the shorter mullet. I dig that. I think that's good. He's got some curly hair. He's going to walk into Tiger Stadium and not be phased. I think I'm somewhere around a 7. No, I'm not going to say it,
Okay.
but I think I'm somewhere at a 7. I like the fact that he knows the offense like the back of his hand. I
Mhm.
like the fact that he's very competent. I like the fact that he does make good reads based off what we saw and what we have seen. And in addition to that, I kind of do like he's a little bit of a risk taker, but I know that Buster's going to prepare him in such a way that if and when he starts game 3, Buster's going to have a specific game plan in that stadium for him, understanding the noise and everything else that's going to come with that at a
Yeah.
night game. So I say right now I'm a 7. How's that?
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. I'm at a 5. And that's not to be mean or judgmental or anything else. I don't have enough on either one of these guys. I'd probably be at a 5 as Trammell also, to be fair. I just don't have enough. And as mentioned, I got some pros, I got some cons on both of these dudes, right? I love what you said. Understanding the offense, the quick decision making, the smart decision making in most cases, right? It does have maybe a propensity there to make a tough decision here or there. Just a little bit gunslinger thing going on, right? That's what I feel like. There's a little. I'm not going to go as far as say a little Brett Favre, but like there's a little gunslinger going on there. Just a little pushing the envelope when maybe he doesn't have to, type of stuff, right? That was kind of the description of that pick based on Sumrall's presser from the scrimmage. He forced it, right? He didn't have to make that throw. because nothing was open. Which, by the way, love hearing that nothing was open. Good
Blanketed.
stuff, defense. That's a good thing, right? We have to remember that. That's a good thing. So, moving along, I'm at a 5. Like some things, got concerns about others. That deep ball arm strength, honestly, for me, is the biggest one that stands out. I think it's because I just know that Trammell's is so much better, right? So you've got this, egg in the other hand, and then you got this one, and it's like, well, I like things here, but then I like things here, and it's just like they're just back and forth, right? Can we just put them together? That'd be awesome. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? So yeah, I'm at a 5 right now, but I might very well feel differently by the time Auburn rolls around if he is a starter, right? Because I'll have more that I can see and process and look at and all that stuff. So we'll see. All right, next question. Morning practices. So you made a mention of this just a minute ago that John wanted it hotter during the scrimmage, right? To test them a little more. And I know there was some other context to that too, but I think he also wanted it temperature hotter. And yet, we're doing morning practices. Now, there's a reason behind this, right? He wants his practices in the morning during games, right? So he wants them on this schedule during game weeks, so that they get more rest time between their last practice and their Saturday game. So that their last actual practice on Thursday, right? Because Friday's a walkthrough, but their last practice on Thursday is in the morning. And then you have maximum rest and recovery time before you actually play a game, whether that game's at noon, 3:30, 8, whatever, doesn't matter, right? So I get that, and I like that concept. However, they've done it all through spring and summer in terms of these morning practices, or fall, it's really summer, but so the problem therein lies, or the potential problem, I guess I would say, is it's not as hot in the morning. It is still hot. It's still Gainesville in Florida. I know you know how hot it is. Do you have a concern at all? And it's fine if you don't, but do you have a concern with a lack of conditioning coming from that and kind of giving them the easier road in terms of the temperature when they're out there practicing in the heat or not in the heat as much? Any worry there that when we get to a 3:30 kick or even a noon kick, potentially, I'm not sure which one's worse, in September in the swamp. In fairness, we don't have any of those. So maybe that's a factor because it's 7:45 and 4:30, right? Are the kicks, or actually maybe even 5 for the game. And then I don't know when Ole Miss kicks. I don't remember, but I don't think it's noon. But regardless, do you have any concerns for those hot early season games in the swamp, and if it affects our conditioning at all by practicing in the morning? That's the question. Pretty long-winded, sorry.
The Ole Miss game's a flex window, so that's either going to be 3:30 to 4:30 or a 6 to 8.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's TBD. No, because I would think with everything else that they've done in the weight room and everything else they've done from just Gauntlet in general and the conditioning in general, I don't feel like it's as great of a factor as we make it out to be. Not to mention, I don't believe that other stadiums are as difficult to play in.
100%. No
looking
question.
at a midday after, because when is the sun at its peak, right? Between 11:30 up till what, 2:30-ish, whatever.
Yep.
And as I'm thinking about the swamp and I think about the shadow that comes over, right, the west side of the stadium, the alumni side coming over that way, I'm thinking, okay, so sun takes place here and there. So ultimately, no, not worried.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. The swamp is the hottest place by far, I think, to play. I can't imagine one being hotter, especially as we get further into September and even October. I don't think there's a hotter place to play in college football, quite frankly. I mean, maybe Raymond James, for USF games because they're still played there. That's maybe it. I can't think of any other one that.
Yeah, but they've got coastal breezes, right?
Right, because Miami plays in Hard Rock, which is hot, but you got some cover on that roof, right? It's not fully open, right? So I think it's swamp, man. I mean, it's hot in there. God, it's hot in there. It's hot in the stands. I know it's hot on the field. Ooh, man. So yeah. But I think I'm with you. I think I agree there. I don't think it's a big factor. Is there potentially maybe a small conditioning gain they're missing out on? Maybe, but I don't think it's enough to make a difference, to your point. Like, these guys are still training in the heat all summer. right? They're still doing stuff in the off-season workout program, right? That I'm sure was done in heat. It's not like the heat's only in July here. We know that. So,
Bingo.
you got May, you got June. We got plenty of time when it's hot. So yeah, I think that is probably the point. That it I don't think it makes a huge difference. So I'm with you there. All right, last question.
Okay.
Thoughts on the mock game week John talked about, right? So they're going to do prep. If you don't know this, they're going to walk through next week, the last week of fall camp. They're going to do as a mock game week. They're going to do everything as they would for FAU the week following, but they're going to do it basically as a practice, right? To get everybody involved in the process, to get the actual game week prep for the following week, right? But to give everybody a practice week because nobody's done that with this staff on the team, right? Whether you've been with them before or not. I mean, I guess technically maybe Durkin and Clark have, right? Because they were with Tulane and John, but nobody else has, right? So, so they're going to do this, but what that means is they're not going to have their last week of fall camp be like their other weeks of fall camp, right? It's not going to be the same amount of practice, the same amount of hitting and condition because they're gonna do one day in full, I think one day in shells, right? And then they're going to do a walk through another day and a run through another day is kind of how he described it, right? So they're not going to have the full go for 2 days, I don't think, like they have been doing during camp. And then they're not going to have like another scrimmage at the end of camp or anything. They're going to doing that this coming weekend, not the following. So like it's going to change the cadence of these couple of weeks of camp here. And they could potentially, I think, maybe be doing more of it for like positional battles or, maybe just a little more stuff there. I think there's other options, right, that they could be doing. So good thing that they're doing this, or does it take away from some of the opportunity to do the other?
Tough question, but ultimately, when I look at, I'll tell you what, it has a lot for me. When I look at it, it has a lot to do with the week one matchup. So if your week one matchup is not FAU, then I might see an issue with it. However, he wants everybody on the same page. He wants them to get into that mode of, and I think that the other reason why he's mainly doing is the fact that, hey, we got to get into game week mode. This is what game week mode looks like where we lock in. Now, true, some of the drills might not be the same or whatever the case might be, but you bet your rear end, when it's game week, I'm sure Sumrall takes it up another notch as far as the intensity goes. Because remember what he said, you cannot walk through that building and not have a sense of purpose about you. So especially on a game week, even though the drills aren't the same, the level of conditioning might not be the same, practices might not be the same, I'd be remiss if the level of intensity of getting prepped during that game week for Saturday is not amped up and does not compensate for such.
Love both of those points. Really like the FAU point. Actually, hadn't considered that. I was going to make maybe not an argument, but just make the point of I do think maybe you are losing some. Now, I will say he did caveat this and say they might do a couple of drills differently, right? Because it's still camp and not actually game week, but that just the schedule was going to follow exactly the same, right? So I still think he may do, some stuff slightly differently in the practices, but they were just going to keep the practice schedule, the pad schedule, right? All that stuff. I was going to make the argument that I think maybe you do miss a little opportunity there that I'm not sure, especially with some of these things not being maybe fully revised, if that's the smartest thing. But you make a great point about FAU and really then Campbell too, right? Like you do not have upper tier opponents that you're starting off this season with. You have maybe not Campbell's a laydown. FAU may not be a laydown, but it's, you don't have to be full go, right? You're not coming out with a Miami or Utah, as has been mentioned, right? We don't open with some, big juggernaut opponent here.
Yeah.
I think you're very much in a position where you can probably afford to do this, to your point, and maybe kind of get that back with the game, right? The game can get you some of that stuff. You can learn some of those things from in-game reps, which the coaching staff has all out said they're going to do, right? They're going to try different stuff, different players, different combinations, look at different things, right? So I think that's a really good call out about the opponent. I think it matters. So yeah, fair point. If we were playing somebody else and it was the first game and it was harder, I think that would matter more. So you changed my mind. Good answer. Good answer. Good
Well,
answer.
good. Well, I'm looking at, and this is what's hard for me. Well, sorry, hard for us because of the whole orange and blue. We said we were going to call spades spades.
Yep.
And I actually go back and, yeah, because I had it saved on YouTube, whatever. I go back and look at the spring game, but more specifically, how he talked to those guys in the huddle. And just before they took the field, it was very interesting to me the level of intensity on his face and what he displayed on them. And all he said was three words. Empty the tank.
Yep.
And the ferocity in which he said it, the cadence in which he said it with, I could only imagine. And going back to the press conference, and I just love football. I love football. I love playing football. I love talking about football. I love football. And knowing that we're going to get to see Sumrall prep for the week of football leading up to what he says is the greatest job ever, playing in this stadium in front of these fans who are wired the same way that he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better believe the intensity is going to be up there.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's a good call. All right. Good deal. Well, with that, I think we're going to close this thing out. Enjoyed this. Hope everybody who listened learned something about what's been going on at fall camp. Got some nuggets if they didn't already have them. So that was the goal. We hope you got some out of it. As always, thanks very much for tuning in. If you like the content, as always, please give us a like. If you want to hear more, hit that subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, and I'll turn it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, man. Love it. Thank you all so much for being on this journey with us. Because again, we do this strictly out of love of Gator football. We don't have a donor page. We don't have a sponsor page. We're not reading ads yet. Yeah, we'll see. We get to that point. B, do you want to call out the next pod real quick?
Oh yeah. So season preview, start of season 4, fourth year doing this begins for our next pod, which is crazy, on September 2nd. So we're moving the date a little. I got some conflicts. So we're going to move it to Wednesday, September 2nd. Normally it'd be on that Monday, but we're going to push it back a couple days. So that will be coming to you for the season preview September 2nd. And then we will get into the regular season cadence from there, starting with first bites after the FAU game. And then of course your regular weekly pods starting Mondays thereafter for the duration of the season.
Bingo. There you go. So there's the upcoming schedule. We're headed back to that regular fall cadence. That's going to be good. So looking forward to the season preview, boiling that down. That'll be great. So again, thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate y'all. Can't do it without you. So wherever you are and wherever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around, Gator Nation.